should be much better now. That should hopefully be much better. Test, test. 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2.
On this Sunday afternoon here in Melbourne, we're at Lakeside Stadium. The big clash between South Melbourne and Moreland City. Both sides on opposite ends of the table. But I tell you what, just having a look at the recent history between these two sides, Moreland City are very, very competitive historically since they've come up to the top flight against South Melbourne. It's been a big week in domestic football. Joining myself, Damien Watson, in the call seat is Lockie Flanagan, who's had a big week himself. How are you, Lockie?
I'm very well, thanks, Damien. And I'm probably feeling much like South Melbourne are at the moment, in that I'm still basking in the afterglow of what was a fantastic Doherty Cup win for South Melbourne out at Jenner Steel Stadium. A crowd of 6,300 in the house for a 5-2 thriller, and South Melbourne, that'll be a famous night for them, one that they'll still enjoy, but they've got to turn their attention back to the league today, because Moreland City, having had a bit of a slow start to the campaign, I mean, a bit of a slow start, they lost their opening 12 games, all of a sudden have put 2 in 2 on the board and are looking like a different side, and out of nowhere, 1 point off potentially jumping out of the relegation zone for the first time in the season. But the South Melbourne side, a stern test as Harrison Sawyer looks to get things moving for the home side. Of course, it was his goal in that 5-2 win against Preston that really put the cherry on the cake, Damien. What a fantastic free kick from the South Melbourne captain.
That's right. And last time these two sides played, he got South Melbourne out of jail, converting from the spot in injury time. I think it was in the 94th minute, just before the end of the game at CB Smith Reserve.
It was. That was when the old 1-0 to South Melbourne was a bit of a running joke around the traps, but they've certainly put paid to that particular moniker in recent weeks. As Moreland City sides up an early cross, knocked away at the first time of asking by Jake Marshall, one of the other cup scorers for the hosts in midweek. And there are a few changes from that side. Crucially, the big one, for my money at least, Damien, is in between the goals, where Javi Lopez is, I can only assume being rested, given the fact that he is on the bench rather than out of the matchday squad altogether. And Willem Lejeune comes in for one of just a handful of starts this season.
I suppose it is good to try and share the load around a little bit, and I suppose coming up against Moreland City, who, got to admit, there is a bit of a golfing class, at least on the face of it, between the two sides. A good opportunity for Lejeune to show his wares in defence for Moreland City. Corey Thomas, who played an integral role last time these two sides played, because Jurcic was out of the side, and he really did take stock as the leader. Bernarda, well confronted there by Jurcic, and there is a deflection. Interested to see how Max Mikkola goes today as well. I mean, his throw-ins are amongst the best in the competition. It'll be intriguing to see how he goes with the corner as well here. So Mikkola, so dangerous from this position. An early opportunity for South Melbourne. 2.5 minutes in. Mikkola pops it up. Sawyer waits from the front. He's not going to get to the contest. And eventually Moreland City clear. Good to see this man, George Sitsin-Yaris, starting once again, just like he did last week. He's come off the pine a lot so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the great South Melbourne stories of this season at least. He obviously made his debut last year, but a boyhood South Melbourne fan who I think is really having a breakout year. The starts are getting more frequent, of course. His first goal in senior colours came a fortnight ago against St Albans. And he, you know, the term of playing for the shirt, I think gets thrown around a little too liberally these days. But I think when you watch Sitsin-Yaris and his intensity, he's not going to do much with that ball over the top, but it's very, very evident how much he cares about this club, I think.
When they played the Melbourne Knights recently, when the chips were down, he was really that energetic force for South Melbourne in the early stages, because Melbourne Knights did dominate possession without necessarily getting the score on the board.
Yeah, and that was just a solitary 1-0 goal for South Melbourne, another youngster in Lucas Inglese scoring the eventual winner. But it's easy to forget that Moreland City going to get themselves a reasonably promising free kick here, that Sitsin-Yaris could have really had an assist for the opening goal inside 4 minutes. He put a cross on the noggin of Noel Bernarda, who you would have expected to score from about 5 yards out, but he just surprisingly wasn't able to do so, and it was one of a number of promising flashes that Sitsin-Yaris had in a big game.
Here's Diego Cuba. What can they do from the set piece here? Cuba, early in the season, had the peroxide hair. Very energetic player himself for Moreland City. So Cuba goes low. Sawyer in the road. Will deflect back to Cuba. South Melbourne with a pretty sturdy defence. This is what they often do. They ground sides into the turf. Just with their pressure. Sometimes they do have a tendency to win ugly, but a win's a win. Here's a chance now for Moreland City through the agency of Spall. Just couldn't quite break through. Now Sawyer on the counter-attack. He's got space in front of him. Harry Sawyer, prolific. Runs inside the 18-yard box. Just lost his footing on that occasion. And Condolian to repel for Moreland City, who, as a diminutive keeper, I think, given they have had, I know, a couple of matches where they've been blown out of the water, but I think he's done pretty well in the circumstances this season for a pretty diminutive keeper compared to others in the comp.
Yeah, and I think he's been that case for 2 seasons now, Damien. I think from memory he led the league in saves made. Obviously part of that is the porous nature of the Moreland City defence last season, but you know, that's only half the battle. I think they could well have conceded a few more, but for a number of crucial saves. And he did come up with a couple of important stops as well last week in that win against Green Gully, which was a massive deal for Moreland City to not just string a second win together, but also get a elongated slice of revenge against Gully, the team who beat them in heartbreaking fashion all the way back in 2018 in the promotion relegation playoff. I'm sure, maybe not to the players, but certainly to the board members and officials, there would have still been a sting in the mouth about that one.
Yes, but I think importantly, it was a good test of their character to come back from a goal conceded in the 16th minute. Sawyer with the header here. Long throw once again. Nicola so damaging in that respect. Condolian to clear once again for Moreland City. I did mention pre-game, Lockie, that even though these sides are on opposite ends of the table, Moreland City historically, when they've played South Melbourne since coming back up to the top flight at the start of last season, have been reasonably competitive in pretty much all of their meetings.
Well, I don't think there's been any more than, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but 2 goals in any of the 3 meetings that they've had between the two. I think the first meeting between them particularly was a really entertaining clash, and that was when a lot of people were, you know, relatively pessimistic about Moreland's future as in their first season of top flight football in 2023, and they really took it to South Melbourne in that game and opened the scoring. As South Melbourne look to do the same here. Sitson Yaris ambling towards goal, just held up by a couple of legs as Archibald swings a ball in the Mikola direction and at full stretch. He just couldn't make contact. I think it would have been a moot point anyway. The offside flag looks to have come up on the Lakeside grandstand side of the field here, but it wasn't a bad ball in from Ross Archibald, and Mikola's not often you see him setting up headed opportunities, not scoring them himself, but good to see him taking up those sort of positions.
Really liked watching Ross Archibald the other night as well. Really energetic, got on the score sheet himself against Preston. He's another who can really solidify the enthusiasm of South Melbourne when they get going. Sutsitas just wakes that one high and out of the perimeter as well. So South Melbourne with a chance here. Sawyer. Looking forward to see how omnipresent he will be, particularly in attack. Saw Sitson Yaris getting involved once again. Mikola just sauntering forward. Looks as if he's going to take the throw in here. It'll be that customary long throw that become so accustomed to. Sawyer is lurking at the front. An intriguing matchup between he and Akuno, both key playmakers for their respective sides. Akuno is on the score sheet. Moreland City's win, of course, over Green Gully. There's a long throw from Mikola. Sawyer with the header. No one really scouting around the pack. Oh, Mikola with a challenge there. He's just pleading his case at the moment, as are the South Melbourne crowd. See what the referee does here. What were your thoughts there? Is Mikola entitled to be disconcerted?
It was certainly hot and heavy. I mean, I think he's going to escape without much in the way of punishment. I'm not sure I'd necessarily agree with his discontent. It was a pretty stiff challenge, but as is often the case with those early nippy fouls, you don't want to give too many cards away too early. You want the game to be allowed to breathe, and yeah, I mean, you don't want to lose players if you can absolutely avoid it. You want 11 v 11. The refs want that too, and so Mikola will stay on the field without any caution. Not that I'm suggesting that he should have been sent off from it. Bernardo, he's a player in form for South at the moment, the Argentine attacker. 8 goals so far this season in NPL Victoria, proving to be a very effective foil for the main act of Harrison Sawyer up top. So it's scooped towards Jordan Lampard, just down nicely by the fullback. And eventually, after some deliberation, Lazaros Pantelides is going to whistle in South Melbourne's favour. I think there are a few Moreland defenders, not least Matt Spall, just protesting their innocence, much in the same way Max Mikola, who is now going to take this free kick, was minutes earlier.
Yeah, he mentions, in terms of the score sheet this season, Bernardo with 8 goals for the season, Harrison Sawyer, the real linchpin, with 12 so far in the NPL season. So an opportunity for Mikola, just sizing up how he's going to approach this.
Left-footed in-swinger from Mikola towards the back post. It was Archibald who got up. Was it cleared off the line? It was, and there was a great save in the lead-up as well from Alex Condolian. And Ross Archibald was not far away at all from backing up his goal in the cup with another in the league.
Well done from Condolian. Just managed to get the palm out there and swat it away in the nick of time. Good reflexes in that situation. And to use cricket parlance, he does tend to bat above his average, doesn't he, as a goalkeeper? Even with a couple of losses of high magnitude scoring-wise. So Mikola on corner again, Archibald at the back post. Just bunted it down with the head. Still a chance here for South Melbourne. Archibald pops it up high. Condolian getting there, and with conviction, takes it and clears for Moreland City.
Bouncing ball in the direction of Fletcher Fulton. The Tasmanian in his, much like Moreland City, sophomore season in NPL Victoria.
Really been impressed with his playmaking ability as well this season. He's been one of the standouts for Moreland City in 2024.
It's going to... I was about to say drift harmlessly out of play for a South Melbourne goal kick, but I'm going to guess that it's a Moreland City ball and a throw, and I think it was bound for the byline, but just managed to hit the flag as Kifley throws it into the penalty area. Fulton trying to cross it into the middle, and this time South Melbourne will get the goal kick they wanted seconds earlier.
Painter Andrews, who was one of the better players last time these two sides played, getting involved there, just applying the perceived pressure. You were obviously at Jenna Steele Stadium the other night, Lockie. Is there any argument to make, given the euphoria of the occasion as well as the result, that, I mean, South Melbourne are a professional outfit. You'd expect them off the short run to still perform well, but does that play a bit of a factor? Does fatigue come into it a little bit?
It's certainly possible, and I think, you know, we've maybe seen that reflected in a couple of the changes to the starting 11, the likes of Sitson Yaris, who came off the bench against Preston, brought in place of Andy Brennan. These are the kind of changes that you can afford to make when you have a squad as deep as South, but there is some pressure, I suppose, on the likes of Sitson Yaris, who is fighting tooth and nail to win the ball back, to prove they're up to the level of playing potentially a full 90 minutes. They're certainly one of the teams this season in NPL Victoria who are in that camp that there are those who are struggling to lock in the starting 11 for different reasons, because no one's exactly throwing their name out there in clear fashion. South Melbourne are definitely not one of those. They're more of the, it's hard to pick the 11 because you've got an embarrassment of riches from which to pick.
Exactly right. So Jankovic, the halfway line, sweeps it out wide. Sits at Yaris presents, just heads it up. Painter Andrews coming a long way down the pitch. Barcia. Little touch from Bernardo was pretty good, just didn't quite carry. Sawyer off the back heel. Now a chance for Barcia again. Drills it through the middle. Here's an opportunity for Mikola from long range. To the left of the goal face. Gondolian just watches that whiz by. So we've gone 14.5 minutes. This match has whizzed by a little bit as well. Still a 0-0 stalemate between South Melbourne and Moreland City.
I can't blame Max Mikola for going for an effort like that from such distance. He would have been looking on, I think, rather enviously at the late goals scored by Jordan Lampard, their fullback, and Harrison Sawyer from the free kick in the cup, and thinking, why can't I do that? I mean, we know he can do that. He's capable of it. It's been a while since he's found the back of the net in NPL Victoria, though. March 18th, last time Max Mikola found the net for South.
He's your quintessential role player, though, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, no. One goal for the season. It may be down on his usual numbers, but certainly not a reflection or suggestion of diminished impact in this team. Absolutely not. Sawyer sitting on the left wing with back to goal. City nicely set in their defensive shape here. The onus on South Melbourne to attempt to pick a gap. There's a run further afield from Archibald, but it's going to be over his head. Instead, Sitsanyaris will contest on the right-hand side. Archibald picking up the pieces. Do well to find a cross in the middle, and find a cross into the middle he does. Sitsanyaris. Left-footed in-swinger. Lampard the target. And the spillage sits up nicely for Bernardo. Cleared at full stretch by the Moreland City defence, who maybe just feeling South Melbourne trying to level up the pressure in the last minute or so. Sitsanyaris has been heavily involved. And the cross takes a deflection. You could see what he was trying to do. And it's the obvious choice if you're a South Melbourne winger. Let's get the ball on the head of Harry Sawyer. Wasn't able to do so that time around, but maybe, just maybe, Damien, the pressure's starting to build, because the last thing you want to do if you're an opposition side is keep giving away set-piece opportunities to South Melbourne.
They've just dominated the territory battle so far, haven't they, as well? South Melbourne dictated terms in this contest. Moreland City, maybe bar one little attacking play, have really got it down anywhere near their goal face. So Mikola with the corner here. Sawyer is lurking. Nice curl on it. Sutsitas with the clearance. Painter Andrews tries to barge his way through. Back it comes to Mikola. Hoists it high onto the head of Archibald. Sands with the attempted header away out of the area. Popped up. Sawyer again, just not enough leverage. And Condolian to clear once again for Moreland City. He's been working overtime. Perfect sunshine here in Melbourne. Really, for this time of year, it's perfect weather as we head towards the wintry months. This is where fatigue often does come into it for all sides of the NPL Victoria competition. But we've had rather warmer weather so far this season compared to previous years. Saw Akuno there, just pleading his case. Looks as if it will be a Moreland City ball. Kiflay, who on the left corner has been prominent when Moreland City have got it down into their attacking third.
Flipped across by Akuno. Sands shoots on the turn. And not a bad idea from the Chilean attacker, if for no other reason than to give this South Melbourne defence, who for the most part, as you mentioned earlier, Damien, have been relatively assured so far.
Sands with 5 goals for the season so far. Akuno with 4. Fletcher Fulton also with 4. So they've shared it around a little bit, albeit the goal scoring tally isn't all that high in comparison to other sides in the competition. Just a bountiful amount of headers here. Barcia, Archibald. Now Bernardo trying to break through. Mikola, good touch. Sawyer lurking. Does he draw the contact? Very good defence in the end. Sutsitas getting involved for Moreland City. He's one of their better defenders, one of the more consistent defenders this season. Thomas, the skipper, likewise very much a general. Getting involved in that passage of play. Drew a deflection, though, with the kick. So South Melbourne will have another opportunity to force a foray forward here. They are very exciting when they make that transition. Max Mikola with the customary long throw. He set up an opportunity for South Melbourne.
Have a look at that line of players stacked against the goal line as Max Mikola missiles it in. There was a South Melbourne head, Ross Archibald stooping down low to try and help it on its way. I suspect we're going to get a repeat act here. I have seen Mikola go for a few trick plays this season, line up for the long throw and then elect to go short, but I think he may make a fool of me in the seconds to come, but this one is going to launched in once again. Archibald again, first to the scene of the crime. Mikola will look to deliver by foot this time. Up and under ball. Condolian got up, didn't get there, but will get the free kick. And a free kick that Harrison Sawyer definitely the advantageously sized, but maybe not in the coming together in that aerial challenge, because he wasn't trying to do anything wrong there. He was just trying to win the ball, as is his right. But Condolian was always going to get the free kick after a collision like that. But Damien, I'm glad you brought up the season that Michael Soutsidis is having for Moreland City. I feel like he flies under the radar, generally speaking, as a defender in NPL Victoria. He's made a couple of good challenges now to deny promising chances for Sawyer. To talk more about him in a second as Lampard stands the ball up into a central area. Attacking it was Sitson-Yaris, and it wasn't the most convincing intervention from Condolian, but the keeper does his job once more. Really the only shame for Soutsidis this season, Damien, is that he's had 2 red cards. He's been a great defender when he's been on the park, but this is just his 10th appearance today. We just haven't seen as much of him as certainly Moreland City would have liked.
Yeah, I think I was there when he had a red card, perhaps against the Melbourne Knights. He can be a bit overzealous at times, but you know, it's about channeling that enthusiasm, really. Mikola, well, he's gone with the feigning option. Painter Andrews pops it up. Sawyer in the area, well defended. Akuno tries to clear for Moreland City. And another opportunity for South Melbourne here. Archibald.
I think one of those 2 red cards for Michael Soutsidis, if memory serves me correct, was actually against South Melbourne in the reverse fixture. So he'll probably be cursing us if and when he watches back of the game and see that we've brought up the red cards.
Oh well. Don't want to bring up too many bad memories. He's played well so far. Mikola with the long throw in. Targeting the back post. There's a cluster of players that fall down. Bernarda involved. That one chipped up by Sands, probably unintentionally in the end. They can breathe again for the moment, Moreland City. That was a general stacks on the mill type situation there. That's what Mikola can do with these long throws. It was a bit of an air ball, to use the basketball parlance, a couple of minutes ago, but usually very reliable. Another opportunity here. Mikola with the long throw. Sawyer's the target. Condolian out of his line. Sawyer over the top, tried to go over the head. Didn't quite get the leverage. Mikola with the header. Still an opportunity here for South Melbourne. Barcia getting involved. Mikola just guides it down in front of him. Archibald will have to use his pace here. He gets to it first. Well done. Feeds it back. Conceding ground to Barcia. Looking for a couple of options. Just chips it up towards Sawyer. This falls inside the 18-yard box. There's no real option there for South Melbourne. Barcia again out wide. Sitson-Yaris couldn't quite control it. But South Melbourne are just pressing and certainly applying the pressure. It'll be another throw in, this time for Painter Andrews, who's come up the pitch, inserting his imprimatur.
It's been an interesting game of football so far, really fascinating. South Melbourne have just had a period of aerial bombardment, not showing any signs of slowing down as Yankovic and Marshall the defensive duo rise, and Painter Andrews gets it in. It's a touch on it by Jankovic, and just a bit too hot to handle for Ross Archibald. But it's been a football game unlike any match I've seen in some time, in that so much of it has just been almost a bit, if you'll forgive me, breaking or committing a Sharon violation here, Damien. It has been a bit footy-like in the sense that it's been a lot of high balls sent into a big pack and
aerial ping pong.
A lot of bash and crash so far in the Moreland City defensive penalty area. But to be fair to their credit, South Melbourne, and they may well still find a way through past this Moreland City side, but they've breached many a team in this competition through that sort of method. And to this point, Moreland City have, I think, done quite a good job of making those long throws, those corners, relatively non-threatening. They've really stacked the goal line, and anything that has been goalward bound that Condolian, who's been active off his line, hasn't reached, they've been able to clear it away.
Yeah, adopting a similar tactic to when they last met, I think. You'll see Spore go down behind the play. They're trying to utilise the same approach again. Sits in Yaris. Approaches, almost trapped it on the half volley. Well done, Barcia. Just curtailed to his right. And there'll be a Moreland City ball. Sits in Yaris, endeavouring to try and keep it into the perimeter, but Kiflay with the throw in for Moreland City. But you're right. I think they've adopted a similar tactic to last time they played. And it was similar in the sense that Moreland City in the first half in that match in round 2 didn't create too many opportunities themselves. It was all about defence. And in the second half, I think the nature of the game really changed, and they could go on the attack because they built up that confidence and dissipated the early jitters.
And you have to be on your guard for so long if this is the dynamic of the game. And they'll have to be alert once more, Moreland City. Another massive throw. Allowed to bounce in the middle. Archibald, the man who made contact. And Condolian somehow, I'm not too sure how, managed to clutch it into his arms right on the goal line.
Well, that's just quick reflexes, isn't it, from Condolian. He's got a good spring on him as well for a diminutive keeper. He can certainly leap up. Archibald tracking this one back. Just hoists it high. Sutsidas will get there on the volley. Just trying to find his teammate in Cuba down the line. Couldn't quite in the end.
And I think if you're Alex Condolian, you sort of have to be agile to compensate for potentially a little bit less, I guess, being a little bit less vertically gifted. Oh, as that ball has struck all the way through to Matt Spall. A huge chance here, an empty net, and would you believe it? Moreland City lead. Oh. Matt Spall, the man in the right place at the right time. He gambled on a long ball forward, and it paid big. A deflection off his body after an attempted clearance from backup keeper Willem Lejeune. Breaks perfectly, and the stroke of Moreland, or the stroke of luck that Moreland City have been searching for all season long, finally arrives at an opportune time.
Sometimes you've got to play the percentages, and that's exactly what Spall did there. He took the risk, and with conviction, he knew that if he could break through Lejeune, the goals were open for him.
Matt Spall.
And Matt Spall with a delightful celebration as well, giving thanks to the coaching staff. It's made this even more interesting. 1-0 in favour of Moreland City. And really, it was against the flow because South Melbourne had dominated the territory battle. Can they respond here? The attempted cross from Bernarda. There's no one home for South Melbourne, but that truly was against the flow. For those who were just tuning in, the first 28 minutes, that was really their first legitimate entry anywhere close to the goal face, I reckon. Maybe second.
But for Sands' I guess, hopeful effort from outside the box, that's been about that. But it's funny how things work out sometimes, Damien, isn't it? I mean, we're just talking about how it's Moreland City who will need to remain alert as South continue to probe with these long throws, these corner balls, because any, hesitation in your awareness and you're going to be 1-0 down. And it seemed to me that it was almost, ironically, the South Melbourne defence who were caught out a little bit by just that launched ball forward, and that led Lejeune into having to make a rushed clearance. So it was a game that was fascinating in the way that it was being played out in a very physical and aerial sense. I think it's become an interesting game in a very different way now, because all of a sudden the onus is on South Melbourne, who are looking to regain top spot on the table, to come back from a goal down.
Well, you mentioned, I suppose, the defence being on top of their game for the full 90 minutes because they're being peppered. Sometimes the perverse effect can happen when the defence really isn't tested and you haven't really dusted off the cobwebs, and I think that's probably been the case for South Melbourne's defence thus far. Particularly from Lejeune's point of view, he hasn't had to do too much today, at least thus far until the last couple of minutes. So what can South Melbourne do to respond here? Jankovic, this game, a bit of added spice. A reminder, Moreland City on the bottom of the table, South Melbourne challenging for top spot at present. And Moreland City are a goal to the good. It's the beauty of NPL Victoria. Never know what can happen. Lampard, Sawyer, now Mikola. Finds Archibald centrally. Out wide, sits at Yaris finding space. On the right flank, what can he do here? Crosses it in, looking for a bit of an open deflection there. Mikola got there, and so did Condolian, though. He was awake to the situation. Adjacent to the left post. And he took it on the chest.
We could be set for a day. I don't want to speak too soon, of course, but we could be set for a day of eyebrow-raising results in NPL Victoria. I've just had a look at the scenes over at Jack Edwards Reserve, and Heidelberg United, who were, or are, as it currently stands, undefeated this season, 3-0 down against Oakley, which would be not a shock result. Oakley are a great side as well, but to see Heidelberg's undefeated run come to an end in such emphatic fashion would certainly cause for some chatter. Spinata is stood up fairly nicely by Luka Jurcic at full stretch to deny the Argentine forward passage.
He's a bountiful source of experience, isn't he, Jurcic? From memory, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but I don't think he was playing last time these two sides played. I think he was a late exclusion from the side, and really a lot of that defensive leadership rested on Corey Thomas, who is the skipper of the side, of course, and he did pretty well to shoulder a lot of that responsibility.
He's had a really interesting journey in a lot of ways, Luka Jurcic. I mean, he is, if you look at purely top flight appearances, he is one of the more experienced heads, but he's still only 26, of course. True. He's actually an NPL Victoria veteran in many ways, because I think he came through with Melbourne Knights in 2015. So, you know, the second season really of NPL Victoria actually being a thing emerging out of the VPL era. And he certainly, I think, does add a bit of experience in terms of what's required to, you know, win and get results at the top level into a side that is, for the most part, even with their more experienced players, have mostly been playing VPL 1, NPL 2 in years gone by. So the rest of the team is lacking that a little bit.
It's amazing, isn't it, in sport, when you put the label of experience on a player, at what age? Because, you know, I suppose it depends on their individual circumstance, but sometimes you just never know. Painter Andrews with the long throw. He sits at Yaris, trying to exert a bit of authority. That one deflected back. Chance now for Lampard. Sweeps it out wide. Couple of players lurking. Mikola! It's in the back of the net! A deflection, and South Melbourne equalise. To the plaudits of the crowd. A few scary moments for the home side, but that has dissipated somewhat. It's 1-1 at Lakeside Stadium after 33 minutes.
And the drought breaker for Max Mikola back on the score sheet. And the weight lifts off his shoulders. The weight lifts off South Melbourne's shoulders as well, in many respects. Those little flutters, the heart palpitations when Moreland City found the net to open the scoring well and truly against the flow. Well, they've dissipated now, and that's the professionalism of the ladder leaders, South Melbourne, unperturbed really by going a goal down and restoring parity in a matter of minutes.
That time, less of a cluster of players at the goal face as well. I mean, that was their issue earlier on, if anything, when they were absolutely peppering. Painter Andrews with the initial throw. So they kept it a fair way out of the, well, certainly a fair distance from the 6-yard box. And maybe just freeing up the attack a little bit, but really probably reading too much into it, to be fair. Condolian tries to drive it long. South Melbourne will still be looking for the win. Don't worry about that. They're not going to be satisfied with 1-1 against the bottom side on the table. Thomas. Now an opportunity for Jurcic. Looks centrally inbound. Waters. Falls to the turf. Suitsidis will take the initiative here. Well, an interesting contest. 34.5 minutes gone. The sun gradually setting here in Melbourne. Kuno leaping high. He's had to have a duality of roles today, hasn't he? And he does cover a lot of territory. He's an attacking player, gets on the score sheet, but also pretty versatile in defence as well.
He's always been one of those players, Apaya Kuno, I think 8 years now at Moreland City, who do whatever is asked of him. Most of the time over his years in the navy blue and white, it has been to score goals, but certainly showing his aptitude for doing a bit more of the behind-the-scenes work. That's a nice ball to chase for Bernarda. Looked to have come off the hand, and referee Lazaros Pantelidis did just take a moment to consider his options before whistling. It was, I mean, it looked pretty cut and dry from this angle. Certainly, Moreland City defence thought that it was obvious, but Bernarda just kept on going. He kept playing to the whistle.
What are you going to do?
Good to see a referee with a bit of a sense of theatre, just letting Bernarda think that he might have been in, he might have got away with one, and just pulling it away from him at the last moment.
I don't mind it, actually, to be honest.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Condolian forcing it long. That one clearing bevy of players to Lejeune, who, just by virtue of South Melbourne's territory dominance, bar the fact that it's a 1-1 scoreline, hasn't been in the fray too much. It's a good opportunity for him just to show his wares and really test the depth of South Melbourne. That defensive part, the structure. Lejeune high, Sawyers against 3. It's like a magnet, isn't he? Draws players to him. Well done there from Bernarda, showing the initiative. Enters forward, does he draw the contact? In the meantime, it's a goal anyway. Out the back door. Bernarda celebrates with Sawyer, and South Melbourne playing the lead 2-1 over Moreland City.
Turned on its head in a matter of minutes, and Noel Bernarda gets the goal that his effort to chase down the loose ball and not give up even after he was brought to ground and there was a shout for a penalty really deserves. You'll have to enlighten me after the whistle as to what the celebration was all about, but he's always good for something entertaining, the Argentine attacker, and a 9th goal of the season. He's not just always good for a celebration, he is usually good for a goal when South Melbourne need it, and he has delivered for Esteban Quintas right before we get towards the halftime interval.
Well, he was pointing at the middleman sign on the advertising hoardings. Does he see himself as a middleman, perhaps?
I don't think that's that's possibly not the worst shout. I mean, looking at the other ad boards there, it's probably the best word.
unless he's got a relative who owns the middleman functions and event space, and he's like, this is an opportunity to give them a plug.
I'd be surprised. Right, I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at.
Free marketing, ambush marketing, they call it. They used to do that, I reckon, with every sporting event with messages on hold back in the day. They used to have the big M signs. They'd pay people in the crowd at every sporting event.
The big arrows, I remember those ones. Well, South Melbourne will be sitting nice and comfortably now. Any fears they might have had when Moreland City found their opener through Matt Spall have certainly subsided now. And they might look to get themselves some security here. Sitsanyaris at the back post. Could he get a goal in front of his home fans? Not from that particular drive. Moreland sizing up another counter-attack, but that long ball is a little bit past the reach of Apaya Kuno. And good battling in midfield from Archibald. South Melbourne have the bit between their teeth. Sitzenyaris assesses his options, cuts it back in the Sawyer direction, but well positioned that time. Diego Cuba wasn't left with a raft of options, Sitzenyaris. Max Mikula, the only man in and around the penalty spot. And Moreland City answer back. Okuno can't be picked out as he made the run in the channel. Barcia. Sawyer, great use of the body. I think I could see what he was trying to do there out of midfield, but the execution not quite marrying up with the vision, the invention. That was a little bit nicer though in the Moreland midfield. Spall. And Zoutsidis. You wouldn't necessarily have expected Moreland City to be the opening goal scorers here at Lakeside. I know not many of the bookmakers would have expected them to come away from this game with a result, but can they cause another surprise as we get towards the end of the first half?
They're just sauntering around at the moment. Thomas sweeps it out wide towards the left flank. Well done there from Painter Andrews. Turns his opponent inside out. Down the right wing he goes towards Sawyer. Almost deflected back to him. Zoutsidis. Thomas. What can Moreland City do to provide a response here? Mikula with a little touch. Bernarda. Mikula using brute strength and pace. Accelerates away. Mikula tries to draw it in towards Sawyer. Well done in the end. Thomas getting back. Just a composed head. Is it back to Condolian? But you get the sense now, South Melbourne, they do have a tendency, as we've seen so far this season, to grind teams once they take the lead, grind teams into the turf. Mikula almost running onto that one. And then there have been other occasions where they've gone on a goal-scoring fest. So it'll be interesting to see what happens now that they have taken the lead. Bernarda. Still Bernarda. Outside the box, Sawyer. Bit of a deflection there. Thomas getting back. A chance for Moreland City, but South Melbourne have just been impenetrable in the last few minutes.
Good defensive intervention from Kifley to snuff out the advance of Jack Painter Andrews. It was an extra special cup game for him on Tuesday night. It was also his 24th birthday, and if you're a footballer, I can't think of many ways to celebrate than 6,300 people turning up to your party in a 5-2 win. That's going to be his throw as well. The expectant South fans raise their voice as it bounces through the penalty area, and Lazaros Pantelides blows for a free kick, an infringement by one of the South Melbourne attackers. Or it was a foul throw, was it? It was too. Yep. Wow, that's drop a coin in the jar, because you don't see one of those particularly often at this level. Well, maybe that's why Max Mikula is usually the designated throw specialist, because you never make a mistake like that. Jurcic, or Fulton rather. For Jurcic. A few Moreland City numbers forward of the ball here. None of them can be found though. Well judged by Jordan Lampard. Himself one of the only players out there in the park today who have actually crossed paths with both clubs. He was a Moreland City player back in the day. One of those, I believe, who was part of that promotion relegation playoff against Gully, who I mentioned earlier.
That's it. Just had a few verbally words to Spall as well. Unnecessary contact at the end. Zoutsidis with the header. Bernarda, hasn't he been prominent in the last 15 minutes? Mikula. Bernarda trying to wrest control. Can't quite. Zoutsidis clears for the moment. We're on the cusp of half-time. That one's out of play. It's been a big week, hasn't it, for football in this country, with, I guess, the international celebration. Tottenham coming here with Ange Postecoglou, has ties with South Melbourne, as we know. But also domestically, it's been such an important week and really good for the sport in this country as well after not necessarily the best publicity in the last couple of years. And I think the other night as well, South Melbourne v Preston highlighted that from a domestic point of view as well. Sits at Yaris, straight to Condolian in the end, who took it on the bounce. It's been great to see the embracing of domestic football, not only in the A-League last night, but also this competition as well and associated comps.
I think the great thing about this week in particular is when Australian football has had its wins of late, they've mostly been, concentrated in one league, one team. The Matildas are doing really well, but there might be challenges elsewhere. Whereas this week, it felt like at all levels of the game, there was a victory to be taken. Obviously, a big crowd for those who are more a European persuasion at the MCG. The women's side of the game, the Arsenal women's crowd against the A-League Women All-Stars. Grand final in Gosford, and of course, the spectacle that was Round 6 Doherty Cup action at Jenna Steele Stadium.
Melding together of all levels, wasn't it?
It was. It coalesced very nicely. Something that cannot be said for the scenes before us on the pitch at the moment. Bit of a gruesome coming together in the air that's left Noel Bernarda on the turf, much to the chagrin of Moreland City players. It does end in a free kick for South.
Yeah, particularly Suicidus. He was exasperated, wasn't he? He can get fiery. He does have that touch of what they call white line fever, doesn't he?
I would say that's certainly fair. As we head towards first half stoppage, South Melbourne, bit of a shallow free kick. Archibald strikes on the edge of the box, but Moreland defence well positioned. Let's be careful there, Mario Barcia. Nearly had his pocket picked. Sawyer, the target in the setting sun. It bounces through to Max Mikkola. The little acrobatic shot on the tight angle. Condolian dived down to his right. Fortunately for him, the shot wasn't one that was goalward bound, but credit the opportunism of Max Mikkola. Just seeing an opening to crumb the loose ball and nearly extracting full value.
2 minutes of injury time this first half. Can Moreland City respond here? Good defence shown by Marshall. Painter Andrews sits at Yaris, collides there with Kiflay. Did well there, Kiflay, just to win the one-on-one battle. Very nice touch. It almost fell to Bernarda at the end. Thomas. And that's the end of the first half, and an entertaining one at that at Lakeside Stadium to the setting sun here in Melbourne. South Melbourne inserting a bit of brightness after early darkness. They trailed 1-0 at the hands of Moreland City. We're at the bottom of the table, of course, coming into this week. But they've responded, South Melbourne, with 2 goals in quick succession to take the lead at half-time. How have you seen it, Lockie Flanagan?
Well, if you just jumped in to see the half-time scoreline, you'd think it's really as you were where everything was concerned. But it's definitely not been a dominant South Melbourne display by any respect. It's been a really open ebb and flow game. Yes, South Melbourne have controlled the possession, they've controlled the chances, but Moreland City, for the first 25 minutes in particular, were quite defensively resolute. Managed to get a stroke of fortune to strike against the flow, but South Melbourne, they're one of the best sides in this league for a reason. They find a way, and it was very bash and crash and not the prettiest football in the world to turn it around. But it doesn't matter. You get the goals any way you can when victory is what you're after. And South Melbourne, as we head into the second 45 on the other side of this break, are well positioned to do exactly that. But until then, we'll take a short break here at Lakeside Stadium. The halftime score, South Melbourne 2, Moreland City 1.
2-1. Moreland City opening the account for a match ball goal. But South Melbourne have responded in kind. 2 goals in quick succession. And they hold the advantage. The question is, I suppose, Lockie Flanagan, will they grind their opposition into the turf and play a defensive style of game, or will they go on the attack and add more goals to the scoreboard?
It's a very pertinent question, and one that Max Mikkola was looking to answer before I'd even had the chance to put my actual thoughts to it. But it's extremely pertinent because you could make the case, I think, for South Melbourne to take this game in either direction. They are a fantastic defensive side, only 12 conceded, 7 clean sheets this year. They're absolutely capable of seeing this result out and backing themselves in to keep Moreland City at bay if they want. But you're in front of a home crowd. I think you want to pile the goals on and give those who are here, those who are watching on at home, a reason to get up and about and come again, because South Melbourne in the second half of the season, they are going to have quite a few games to come here at Lakeside in what will be an important push, not just towards the top of the table, towards the NSD, but potentially towards the premiership as well, because they've only played, I believe, I think this is their 6th home game of the season, and so they do still have quite a few to come. I would hope they'll look to add as many goals as possible.
They've executed both, haven't they? Both methods so far this season. You go back to the first round when I think they beat Melbourne Knights 1-0. The goal from Harry Sawyer came in the first 5 minutes, as that one's off the head there of Jake Marshall. Be a Moreland City ball through Condolian. And in that situation in the opening game of the season, remember, Harry Sawyer scored within the first 5 minutes, almost scored in the first 30 seconds as well. And then they got that 1-0 advantage and really didn't relent. They just managed to grind their opponents into the turf somewhat metaphorically for the rest of the game. So, but then there have been other times where they've stacked on the scoring sheet. So it'll be intriguing to see what happens here. So Sutsitis trying to penetrate through, can't quite. Getting there was Archibald. Has possession at the moment. Conceding ground. Painter Andrews. The halfway line. Just sweeps it out wide. Yankovic. Lampard going down the line. Ricochets back. Barcia. Sawyer. That one maybe a little bit too much leverage. Well done there from Sitsin-Yaris to get there before it went out of play. Sutsitis. He's done well, I think, in the one-on-one against Sawyer today. Injects a bit of speed. Cruises through Lakeside Stadium. Feeds it out wide. Can Moreland City respond and equalise here? Lampard trying to apply the pressure on Spall. Deflection. Opportunity for Moreland City to methodically craft an attack here. Jurcic, as we said, he's 26, an experienced head on his shoulders with the throw-in. Keeps it low. Kuno is in there. 1/4 deflection. So it'll be intriguing to see whether the pattern of the game will change after the interval. Certainly been coast to coast and zippy. Moreland City creating a few opportunities. Here's Diego Cuba with the corner. A very lively player for Moreland City, has been for much of the season. He's directing a bit of traffic. Cuba with the corner. That one took a deflection there off Barcia. And Lejeune really did have to get a hand on that one. Very risky business.
Wicked delivery from Diego Cuba. He and his brother Sian over at Avondale have certainly added some excitement to the attacking stocks in NPL Victoria. Lejeune had to be at his best to repel the effort. Another great delivery, this time allowed to bounce, and the end result is the same. Third successive corner for the visiting side. And this is certainly the sort of start that head coach David Ostojic would be hoping for as they look to get back into this game. Can Cuba produce another fine delivery? This one's a little bit deeper. It bounces again to the back post, losing his footing in the middle was Sands. Thomas with a cutting ball to the far side. And Cuba is waiting. Harrison Sawyer not all that used to doing the defensive duties.
Pretty versatile figure, though, to utilise that height.
Oh, yeah, when you stand at the lofty heights that he does, you almost have to. Into the middle it goes once more. I think it might have taken a touch off a hand, so South Melbourne get a reprieve from what was a 2-minute spell of, well, Moreland City almost giving South Melbourne a taste of their own medicine. We're just going to launch as many set pieces in at you as we can, and it's up to you to try and turn them all away. And to their credit, South Melbourne turned them all away. They did.
Yeah, it was a bit of a bombardment, wasn't it? Lejeune sets it up high towards the left wing, looking for Archibald. Shoved his opponent Spall there. So Moreland City, got to give them credit for the way they've started this second half. They haven't gone into their shell necessarily. They've been patient when required, but they've held the territory battle so far in the second half. Can they capitalise on it? 51 minutes in. That has been probably one of their Achilles' heels so far this season. Long ball in the front spot. Painter Andrews heads it down. Late. Now Waters out wide towards the right flank. Mikola maybe a little bit overzealous with the contact. Cuba will have it. Chance from the set piece for Moreland City to respond. Kuno just injecting a bit of enthusiasm, clapping, getting his teammates up and about, knowing they can capitalise on an opportunity here. So Cuba, lively player, has been prominent already early in this second half. Probably not as prominent in the first half. Takes his time, methodically sizing up his options. Cuba keeps it low in trajectory. Sawyer confronted in the confined space. Sutsitas was involved. It spills out to Mikola. And really just finding a bit of territory there. Moreland City with the chance to repel for Jurcic.
I have a bit of a left field question for you here, Damien, as we get into the throes of the second half. Are you surprised that the lights have not come on here at Lakeside Stadium? I feel like the darkness is, maybe it's just because we're sitting under the, I guess, the shade, if you will, of the grandstand here, but it feels like the light has gotten away from us fairly quickly here at Lakeside this afternoon.
A little bit, but at the same time, you're right, we are under the shade, so probably not as exposed to the natural light, but it seems like the sun has set. It's a bit like in that situation when you're in the car, you don't know where to put the headlights on as Yankovic sees that one out.
I think I'm just once bitten, twice shy, because I was here last season at Lakeside, I think in round 19. Dandenong Thunder v South Melbourne on a Sunday night. Got to half-time, the lights couldn't come on, and they had to play the second half on, I think, on Tuesday night later that week. So
like a Waverley Park situation for the Aussie rules football fans.
They couldn't get the lights to come back on. There was some issues, so they had to replay the second half at a later date. It ended up being a very good game, 3-2, but just don't want that to happen again, because I want to finish the 90 here at Lakeside. Yeah. Moreland City want to keep this going because they're having a nice little spell at the moment.
It's interesting. Look at Cuba just lurking in the foreground. There's the throw in, Sutsitas with the header. Mikola getting to the contest. Falls to the ground. South Melbourne bench certainly very animated. Mikola still on the turf. Just to the naked eye, it looks probably more accidental than anything else. Maybe I'm in the wrong there, but he's still on the turf, Mikola. And he'll have to receive, you'd suspect, a bit of medical attention. Or at least assessment. He's been an important player so far, was very prominent in the early stages. Know about his long throws and his corners. Such an integral player in the South Melbourne lineup. Looks like we're going to have a bit of a brief intermission here. Mikola's still on the ground. In a bit of agony at the moment.
And interestingly, as I just cast an eye over to the halfway line, South Melbourne do look to have a substitute prepared. Andy Brennan, of course, started and scored in the Cup at Jenna Steele Stadium on Tuesday night. Looks prepared to come on. And testing my eyesight, but I think there's the number 80 in red on Lucas Martia, the fourth official's board, so that would suggest that George Sitzenyaris will be the player to come off. I wonder if they're just holding that to give themselves a bit of time to reassess the welfare of Mikola. Otherwise, they might have to change that 80 to a 22. But for now, South Melbourne will defend with 10. Sutsitas flicks it on towards the penalty spot. A Kuno contest. It's brought down and struck on the turn by Sands. Lejeune stands tall once more. And with South Melbourne, a man reduced through injury, Moreland City very nearly struck.
Mikola seems like he's back on his feet, but that would awake any defensive lineup from their slumber there. Sands was a little bit off balance when he tried to strike that one, but we know how dangerous he can be. Of course, 5 goals coming into this encounter for the season. They have been peppering, haven't they, Moreland City? They've dominated the territory battle so far in this second half. Huber trying to curl that one in. Sawyer returning serve.
Oh, remember our discussion about what Harrison Sawyer must wonder sometimes, what he's doing in the defensive penalty area? Well, that's your answer. That is as emphatic a header as you'll see cleared out of the box.
Exactly right. Very prolific scorer, as we know. 12 goals coming into today's fixture for Harrison Sawyer. It's been somewhat of a journeyman as well. As the throw in, a plethora of defenders for South Melbourne. Jurcic with the throw in originally. Marshall getting involved, and now Sawyer sweeps it long out wide. It's going to beat Thomas, but it'll be a Moreland City ball as a substitution is initiated. And George Sitzenyaris, who's provided a lot of zip starting on the pitch. Certainly in the early minutes he was very prominent, and he takes a well-deserved spell.
Melbourne,
he does take a well-deserved spell, and
replacing number 80, George Sitzenyaris.
What a pleasure it must be for Esteban Quintas to know that he's got someone like Andy Brennan with over 160 games of top-flight experience just sitting on the pine waiting to come on and make his influence. As I cast my eyes towards the heavens, Damien, I wonder if someone at the Lakeside Trust has been listening in on the broadcast, because the lights are slowly coming on, and I am cutting a far more relieved figure than I was at the 51st minute mark.
I often wonder whether there's a procedure, if they use a time or just the level of light before they actually turn it on. Something I've never really thought about, actually.
Yeah, I'm not sure too. I'm not sure either, but I'm glad they're on. That's the main.
And I'm glad I don't work in event management and have to make these decisions.
There was a nice, ironic jeer, I think, from a few South Melbourne fans who are wary of those lighting troubles in the past as they slowly trickled on.
So there's the throw in into the path of Sawyer. Trying to inject a bit of speed. Sutsitas, that take a deflection off Sawyer. Well, the referee just having a few words there to Bernardo, who's already on the score sheet today. There's a Moreland City ball, I think. Bernardo suggesting it didn't take a deflection off Sawyer. Referee had other ideas. Kuno. He hasn't been as omnipresent today. He's had to do a lot of defensive work, hasn't he? Sawyer, Bernardo, chips it to Mikola. The left corner, Sawyer, he's dangerous from here, falls to ground. Was he interfered with? No, he wasn't. Sutsitas again, very good on the defensive post for Moreland City. Clears it for the moment. Painter Andrews. Now a genuine 2-on-1 with Brendan coming in to the fray there, and Painter Andrews late. So South Melbourne, after Moreland City probably dominated the territory battle in the last 5 to 10 minutes, starting to see the pendulum swing a little bit in their favour. Marshall. Now Jankovic. Marshall again, approaching the 60-minute mark. South Melbourne with a 2-1 advantage. They scored, if you're just tuning in, 2 goals within the space of about 5 minutes after Moreland City opened the account. Here's a chance for Archibald, tried to curl it around. He lost his balance and slipped over in the process. So Condolian, who's been working overtime in this contest as he has for much of the season in an admirable manner, he'll clear for Moreland City.
It's always tricky for Ross Archibald or any player to contort your body in that situation, to wrap your boot around the ball. Condolian playing with fire. And very lucky that, much in the same way his opposite number, Willem Lejeune, was in the first half, he wasn't burnt.
Yeah.
I think he might even get another crack at this goal kick as well. The ball perhaps still in motion as he looked to bring it back into play.
Very good for a somewhat diminutive keeper by comparison. Good spring. We've spoken about his attributes earlier in the call.
And it would be so easy for someone of his stature to be a little bit more timid in those aerial situations, which South Melbourne are so amenable to and so proficient or prolific from. But he's been off his line almost every time. Anytime there has been a ball to come out and claim, he's been at full pelt to attempt to haul it in. Hasn't always done so successfully, but you'd rather, if you're David Ostojic, to have a keeper who backs himself in to go for it than one who just timidly sits on the line and waits for one of these towering South Melbourne attackers to nod the ball away.
Got extra lights as well in the opposite stand to the far side for those watching. Cuba, the edge of the 18-yard box. South Melbourne with a plethora of defenders. Mikola falls to ground again. Seems to have recovered very quickly after he was felled earlier, about 5 minutes ago. Barcia out wide to the rudder. Brennan tries to control it. He's in a confined space. And Thomas, in fact, will give it to Jurcic. The throw in for Moreland City. Hope you're enjoying the stream. The NPL Victoria YouTube page or through other avenues as well. Mikola sizes up his options. Gains a bit of territory, then feeds it out wide. Brendan's certainly been prominent since coming on the park. And off the pine, Lampard. Long ball in the Sawyer direction. Clean bowls a couple. Archibald does well with pace in that situation to gain the pass from Bernarda. Didn't quite come off as well as they would have liked, that combination, but still a South Melbourne ball, and it's the dangerous arms and hands of Mikola. They can provide the long throw in. Saw that on many occasions earlier in the contest. Like how he just barges through the posts there and instead of walking over it. Fair enough. He's got to get a lot of leverage on this throw in. Mikola. Long, Suitsidis. The high header, still not quite out of the area for Moreland City. They are out of danger now for the moment. Trying to traverse through is Sands. Lejeune, gather it here. Tries to find Lampard, goes over his head. Sawyer with space. Hasn't that been an intriguing matchup? Who do you think has won out between he and Suitsidis? That one deflecting off Suitsidis there. Because I think the defender held up his colours a little bit.
No, I think Suitsidis has done very, very well against the league's best attacker. I think maybe the individual battle, I think Suitsidis has maybe just edged it for the moment, but I think the problem for Moreland City is you've got to put so much focus on Harry Sawyer that it frees up the others to still be a malicious influence in the attack as it's launched in, one punch away by Condolian. He has to retreat swiftly because it'll be likely coming back in the opposite direction in no time at all. Painter Andrews darts the eyes up. Sets a task for Archibald. It's a big up and under ball from Yankovic. Sure, Brennan, I was going to say he'd do well to control that one out of the night sky, and it did prove a task just a fraction too great. Yeah, the individual matchup, I think Suitsidis has come up on top, but you just have to, Harrison Sawyer is not a one-man job,
Correct.
and you've got to put so much of your attention into stopping him because he is so dominant both on the ground and in the air that it does sometimes allow players, as we've seen really from the goals that South Melbourne have scored through broken patches of play, the likes of Bernarda and Mikola, to maybe pick up a little bit of extra space.
Sources of gold, aren't they? Attackers of that nature where you've got a tall frame, very versatile and very flexible.
almost like a black hole in a lot of way. He just seems to attract the opposition defenders or the ball into him. But the other thing I think that goes often uncredited in Harrison Sawyer's game, I think people often lazily assume that, you know, you get all these great physical attributes from him in terms of what he can bring aerially, what he can bring with back to goal. People assume that he's slow because he's tall. He's actually not. He's got a decent turn of pace. Chested and controlled by Mikola. I think the effects mic sums up the pass forwards that time if you're proficient in Spanish. Good old Noel Bernarda. Never short on entertainment. It's the 28-year-old Argentine loving life in South Melbourne blue after signing from Green Gully. His third club in NPL Victoria. Trying to make something happen here. He'll get a throw, and that's as good as a corner for South. Technically his fourth club in Victoria if you count the one game that he played for Hume City in the 2021 Australia Cup.
It's an age-old question, isn't it? I think in all sports, but in that situation, as we see Mikola retrieve the ball, is it beneficial? We speak about loyalty. Suitsidis looks like he's coming in to approach the bench for Moreland City. Maybe a change of boots.
A boot change?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't seen one of those in some time in game.
Well, when you got to go, you got to go.
That's true. One can only wonder what the what the actual issue was with the preferred choice of cleat to start the game. Might be a different mould, different stud change, perhaps. Condolium
receiving a bit of attention as well. So while we got this intermission, I guess the question is, as a player, I suppose it depends on an individual case, but we speak a lot about loyalty, but then does a player benefit themselves further by surrounding themselves in different environments at different clubs? Makes them a bit more broad in their experience.
Yeah, I think there's certainly something to be said for that, and I think Noel Bernarda, you know, you could look at it and say he's jumped around to 4 different clubs. What does that say about him? But I think each club in that chain has sort of been a step up the ladder. He came into Thunder, he was really impressive. Gully looked like an upgrade at the time, but it didn't quite work out. Now he's with one of the best clubs in the league and looking to get on the end of what was a rare miss from Max Mikola from a throw. It's not often you see them go out of play for a corner.
Maybe it was a build-up.
Yeah, just had too much time to think about it, if anything.
Yeah, uncharacteristic, but for the most part today he's been very accurate, very dangerous. These throw-ins as well, particularly early in the contest. So Moreland City through Jurcic, trying to work it forward down the right wing. Akuno, very good a couple of weeks ago. I think the last couple of weeks he's been pretty good for Moreland City. Here's Sawyer. Little touch. Brennan manages to break away from his opponent and find space. Brennan crosses it inboard for Sawyer. Can't quite get on the end of it. Just didn't have the reaction time. Archibald with a big long-range shot. Well saved by Condolian, but entertaining football all round.
Very nice stuff. And this is what we'll start to see from South Melbourne as the game draws towards the final 20 minutes. The lines will start to get more stretched, and South Melbourne, with the injection of pace that the likes of Andy Brennan and others have and will offer as we go later into the game off the bench, I think South are going to fancy their chances of adding to the scoreboard on the break.
How dangerous is Archibald on his day in particular when he injects that bit of pace? He's another tall player who's quite deceptively quick as well, and just a bit of an enigma at times too.
He's a real handful, both in the air and on the deck as it's flicked towards the back post. Has it crossed the line? It has now. Noel Bernarda makes it a double. And there is conjecture from the men in white around how it happened. But Noel Bernarda will not care one jot. He is a man on fire right now. Double digits in season 2024 in NPL Victoria, and we were talking earlier, Damien, about the decisions he's made to move from club to club. Well, he must be feeling very vindicated about the decision he's made to sign on at South Melbourne in season 2024.
Get supported to the crowd as well. That's what you sign up for when you join South Melbourne. That was well judged too from Bernardo. They have been peppering South Melbourne in the last 5 minutes. Moreland City probably dominated the territory battle in the first 10 minutes of this second half. But since then, South Melbourne have regained control. Saw Archibald with a long-range shot that had to be saved very well by Condolian. And they've peppered, and they get the just reward. It's going to be a long way back now for Moreland City. 3-1 on the score sheet.
We'll have to get something back quickly if they're going to be any chance. Moreland City, Noel Bernardo. It's looking to be his day at the moment. Moreland do have substitutes up their sleeve should they choose to use them. They're going to get a free kick to at least give South Melbourne something to think about.
Seen a number of the players, particularly for Moreland City, change over to the long sleeve jerseys during the half-time break as well. There's a cool night in Melbourne. Cuba. A set piece. Sawyer getting to the front. Chance now for Waters. Out wide. Spall, who kicked the first goal of the game. Oh, gee. Copped one from the corner flag in the end. In the meantime, Lejeune with a good save. That corner flag almost banged him in the head in the whole process. South Melbourne have an opportunity to repel here. Lejeune has increased his workload in the second half. Have a moment he'd rather forget with the one-on-one with Spall, which resulted in a goal for Moreland City in the first half. But other than that, it's been on the ball. Jurcic with the throw in here for Moreland City. Can they inject a bit of pace, a bit of decent body language as well? It just seems a bit flat and stagnant at the moment. Sometimes it's a natural reaction after a goal is scored at the other end. Mikola over the head. And out. Have seen the attendance as well. I suppose there's a bit of enthusiasm not only amongst the playing ranks at South Melbourne off the back of that win earlier in the week against Preston, but I think amongst the supporter base as well. Obviously not the same sort of crowd as the other night, but I think it naturally draws a greater attendance.
Absolutely, and in the South Melbourne side, they want to see goals. They've certainly been treated to that. Fulton, his cross is blocked en route. Kifley, lovely outside of the foot pass to pick out Fulton. Can he find a man in the middle? The answer is no. Great defensive coverage by Jake Marshall. Sticking a boot in. Exactly where it needed to be.
Do you think he's somewhat underrated, Marshall? I mean, there's a lot of big names for South Melbourne. This is the thing. It's hard to not be underrated.
I think it's hard to call, one of the reigning player of the season underrated, but I think some people surprised at the fact that he was the best player.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Perhaps I think he doesn't get enough acknowledgement for how good he actually is. Yes, if that's your question, then yes, I agree. I agree.
Read a roundabout way of asking it. I know he's got some plaudits and acknowledgement, but I think given his record, I suppose this is the thing when you've got players like Sawyer in there, who's a goal-scoring avenue as well. They come into the conversation. You look at the flamboyant characters as well. Marshall sort of gets the job done each week. Yeah,
and it's one of those positions sometimes, centre-back, where you're almost punished for being very good at your role because it means people notice you less.
Yeah.
Is Fulton going to haul that one in? I think it's just going to be a fraction beyond him. But if you are making the blocks that you need to make, not at full stretch or launching yourself at it because you've been caught out of position, if you're just in the right place at the right time all the time, it's almost unspectacular, but at the same time it's very impressive. And I think Jake Marshall does a lot of that sort of work, which is maybe why to the average punter he perhaps doesn't get the widespread acknowledgement that certainly his defensive ability merits.
Yeah.
Being replaced by number 16, Emil Pios.
So Pios coming on, and Mikola having a well-deserved spell. He was very good in the early minutes, wasn't he, for South Melbourne? He can hold his head high after his performance this evening / afternoon. Sawyer. Well, they're not happy, the South Melbourne fans. Sawyer claiming it came off an opponent. Kuno was waiting for it. Lampard, high ball, off the head of Brennan. Thomas, almost on a divot towards Fulton. Just couldn't quite control it. Just that little bit of poise required in that situation. Brennan, little touch to Sawyer. Very flexible. There's that deceptive pace and a very good ball for Painter Andrews. Trying to traverse his way around Kifley. He just couldn't quite control it at the end. Now on the counter-attack, Ali has come onto the pitch for Moreland City. It's just forward of halfway here for Moreland. Cuba certainly been more evident his contribution in the second half compared to the first. Chance now for Bernarda. He'll be full of beans and confidence. 2 goals under his belt in this game. Kifley. Fulton, little touch. Akuno. The edge of the 18-yard box. Tries to weave his way around Barcia. Couldn't quite. Lampard's there. Bernarda. South Melbourne, the defence is composed as ever. Pios has just come onto the pitch, falls to the ground. South Melbourne at the moment just dictating terms. We've gone 76 minutes. It's a 3-1 scoreline in favour of the home side.
That was clever from Pios. I mean, the pass looked a little bit ho-hum, just flicking it over the shoulder, but it didn't need to be a good pass because he knew that if he positioned his body in the right way, he was going to draw the contact from the defender who was rushing through the back of him, get the ball away so he can pick up a cheap free kick and reset lines for South. But great to see him back in the side today. Of course, he was one of the players who missed out on that Doherty Cup clash with Preston in midweek. Of course, Moreland City were dumped out of the cup on the same night, 3-0 against the Oakley Cannons. Not exactly a shameful result by any stretch, given Oakley's perennial power in this competition, but also their resounding result against a previously undefeated Heidelberg today. 3-0 winners out of Jack Edwards' reserve. South Melbourne looking to add to their 3-1 advantage. Brennan has picked the pocket of the Moreland City defence. It's Andy Brennan off the bench. Didn't get it the first time of asking. Couldn't do so at the second either. They hang on. Brennan loads up a long shot. And it whizzes past the left-hand upright. Andy Brennan once, twice, 3 times unsuccessful at getting his goal off the bench, but not for lack of trying.
He was persistent, wasn't he? That's one word you could describe Andy Brennan in a nutshell. And just has that uncanny knack of being in the right place at the right time as well. He'll get the opportunity. Adjacent to the corner flag. Very exciting player, as we said. Bountiful amount of experience. He can enjoy himself in this situation. Brennan with the corner. Sawyer is lurking. Got Yankovic in the fray as well. Archibald flies. Couldn't quite get the head to make contact. Opportunity here for South Melbourne to, I guess, set up a wall. Once again, Lampard as resolute as ever. Akuno, Cuba. Archibald came in late. Cuba just exuding a little bit of frustration. He'll have position here. Feeds it to Ali. Now Jurcic. Suitsidis has been gallant in defence today. He's exuded a little bit of pace also in the second half. Prepared to work his way up the pitch. Jurcic down the right flank. Farjath just come onto the pitch. Oh. You got to love the atmosphere here at Lakeside Stadium sometimes. Just the passion of the fans. Goes in favour of South Melbourne this time. Lejeune To resume hostilities once again. I was reading a tweet from, if you could call it a tweet these days, from one of your colleagues, Joey Lynch, who said the atmosphere the other night at Genesis Steel Stadium was one of the best he's ever experienced, at least domestically. Given you were there, Lockie, would you add that and I guess agree with that statement as well, given you've seen a lot of football in Melbourne?
I have to say it was definitely up there, and the way that the seating was arranged as well, I think really aided that spectacle to add to the noise. Of course, there were no fans on the broadcast side. There were South Melbourne fans and Preston fans packed 6 or 7 deep on the hill at either end of the goal. And so it really not only crammed in the fans, but crammed that noise in. Sawyer twisting and turning, shooting, but the deflection takes all the sting out of the ball en route to Alex Condolian, who can make an easy collection. I really do think the density of the crowd aided the noise, but also the vision. I mean, I've never seen scenes like that certainly in Victorian football.
It was a bit like a mosh pit, wasn't it?
It honestly was. It felt like almost a bygone era. Trouble here for Moreland City. Sawyer trying to tee up Andy Brennan. They're livering dangerously. This Moreland City defence. Can count their lucky stars that they haven't conceded a fourth. Can they pull one back in the opposite direction? Fulton. The ground just gives way beneath his feet. Somehow manages to get out with the ball anyway. Really good stuff from the Tasmanian youngster. But the end result is the same. South Melbourne looking to push the pace. Pios was caught dallying. It's Brennan. Taking it and running. Round Kifley. Round another. Looking to feed Pios. But the right touch at the right time from substitute Newman Ali. And Moreland City can attack in the opposite direction.
Cuba looks laterally. Jurcic. Now Thajaf. Saw him play against the Melbourne Knights a few weeks back and was very much a key integral part of Moreland City's efforts there. Where they were pretty gallant. Lejeune. All Moreland City here looking to initiate an attack. Sutsitas. Cuba again. Now a composed head of Thomas, the skipper. Looks laterally. Kifley. Kuno. He's had to cover a lot of territory today, not only in attack but also in defence. Thomas receiving from Sutsitas. He's confronted by his opponent, Bernarda. He's full of adrenaline at the moment, and understandably so. 2 goals to his name today, for those just tuning in.
It was about 7 minutes too early for the shirt swap. Bernarda.
Kifley. Thomas. They're being patient with their build-up here, Moreland City. Sea of South Melbourne players in defence. Pios. Sawyer. Just leaves it behind. He'll get it again. Nice little touch. Pios again. To his right. Archibald. He's very dangerous from long range. Saunters forward. Brennan. Little touch was good. Oh, gee, Condolian had to work hard. Pios had the goal face in front of him, but Condolian was awake to it. Good save.
Everything right, bar the finish from South Melbourne on that attack. That was slick stuff. From one side of the pitch to the other, both vertically and horizontally. Painter Andrews motors towards goal. Early cross. Not particularly prettily, but dealt with by Corey Thomas. Fulton. Great first touch to buy himself some time. Darjath will bring it into his control and win a corner. That's good play from the visitors.
Does inject a bit of speed coming off the pine as well, Farjeff. We've seen that a few times this season. Like Cuba's game in the second half as well, has really lifted since half time. Had the responsibility of these corner kicks as well, but also from a set piece, just making a few judgments. They have tested the South Melbourne defence at times, despite what the scoreline suggests. Cuba curls it in with the corner. Waiting at the back, Thomas the skipper. Can he control it? Not quite. Has support through the agency of his teammate there in Sands, who gets one back for Moreland City. Lovely strike. Was waiting at the back post and managed to sneak it in. 3-2 the scoreline, and maybe a few little nerves here at Lakeside Stadium.
Well. We might be on for a grandstand finish at Lakeside after all. A fine finish from Jose Sands. I think that's goal number 6 of the season for the Chilean. He's really found his form in the last month and a half. And I think props have to go to Captain Corey Thomas as well, because he just stuck an outstretched leg at a loose ball that so could have easily have ended, and it could end right here, but it's a good save from Condolian. Or it isn't. What's happened here? No, it is side netting.
Cheering.
Cheering for a corner. It looked for a brief moment. I was going to say that was I know it's 4-1, but that was, or 4-2 rather, but that was a very nonchalant celebration from Andy Brennan. A good save from Condolian. South Melbourne could make that goal to bring Moreland back into the contest, a moot point here. Brennan, who won the corner, takes the corner, swings it towards Archibald. And down goes Chidiar Tajiath. And Moreland City haven't given up the ghost of taking a point from this game. Few runners making the move further forward. It's through for Apai Akuno. A great save from Lejeune. And South Melbourne clear the danger. Well, the goals change games moniker, rearing its ugly head at Lakeside for South Melbourne. They looked home and dry. 3-1 up with 5 minutes of regulation to play. Jose Santos' goal has given them a fair bit to think about, and Apai Akuno nearly levelled it up for the visitors.
Know what that reminded me of? Iran 1997 against the Socceroos.
Don't say that.
Even just the style. So, Cuba with the corner. Sawyer getting back. It was a lovely corner as well. Just curling that one in. Unfortunately, South Melbourne defence were awake to it. Sawyer getting back. So, just an air of tension here at Lakeside Stadium. 3-2. It's been an entertaining contest. Maybe exceeded the expectations of many who have attended. Condolian. Archibald with the header. Just under 3 minutes of regulation time remaining. Good way to end what has been a fantastic week for football domestically. Sawyer waiting for the pass from Pios. So South Melbourne just edging closer. See Brennan in the foreground. Hasn't he been dangerous since coming off the pine? Painter Andrews just sauntering forward. Happy to see the time continue to pass by. Can they put the result beyond doubt here, South Melbourne? It's a congested area in front of Painter Andrews. As he executes the throw in here, he'll have that responsibility with Mikola on the bench. Painter Andrews with the long throw in. Sawyer in front. Back to Painter Andrews. He's injected a lot of speed, particularly in the second half. Brennan. Good ball for Painter Andrews. Sawyer to finish! Condolian with a brilliant save. The reflexes were superb. Great football all round. Chance now for Lampard. So now South Melbourne are peppering. Thomas, resolute in defence. Sands. It opens up for him. What can he do here? Sands already full of confidence. He scored only moments ago. Waits for the traffic to pass by. Opportunity here for Fajath. Turns it straight over. Now South Melbourne can take advantage. Brennan, left foot ball. It's coast to coast at the moment. Bernardo's been good today. Tries to keep his footing and does so successfully. Bernardo with 2 goals already to his name. Pios elects to go laterally to Brennan. Back to Pios from long range. Over the crossbar. It's exciting stuff at Lakeside Stadium. 89 minutes in.
Well, that was really the perfect time. I mean, looking at it in hindsight for Moreland City to get that goal back, because if it happened at the start of stoppage time, you're thinking, oh, this game's not going to change too much. It's just 1 goal. South Melbourne will see this out. But it's given us a good 10 minutes, really, of football. We don't know how many stoppage time minutes will be added onto this game. to actually breathe life into the contest, and all of a sudden, a game that has had a lot of chances, albeit from broken players, giving us just a plethora of these end-to-end flowing moves. And I honestly wish we could be a prospect of going to extra time in this one, because it's been quite the gripping last 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, we hope you're enjoying it on the stream. It's a good way to spend your Sunday evening.
Payos short for Brennan. Do they try and just hold the ball in the corner here, South? I guess time will tell. Looks as though perhaps on this occasion Jack Painter Andrews will look to take another one of his distance throws. Condolian's save minutes earlier from Harrison Sawyer was exceptional. He's kept his side in the game.
He's got quick reflexes, doesn't he, as well as a spring.
In at the near post, allowed to bounce, the acrobatic effort. Pios was moving for it. Moreland City, anywhere will do at the moment. Akuno, great header, good touch from Fulton, and a pressure relieving free kick for the visitors, who want to take it quickly. Now back within striking range, but time is their enemy. Kifley. South Melbourne with plenty behind the ball. Phalanx of blue shirts for Moreland City to try and breach as they go long. Sutsitis was forward. Archibald snuffed out the danger. Brennan, great ball, a well-intentioned ball. Slightly inaccurate for Sawyer, but it finds its intended target eventually. Bernarda is the man, slipped in, teeing up Pios! Oh, it's just past his reach. Chance not dead, though, for South. A deflection into the middle. Akuno and Sawyer! That's the ball game for South Melbourne. And, of course, it's Harry Sawyer. Captain Fantastic to finish it off. Condolian made a heroic clearance. He leapt forward to double-fist it away. But when Harrison Sawyer gets an open look at goal, there is usually only one result. For the 13th time this season in NPL Victoria, Harrison Sawyer is on the score sheet. And for the second time this season against Moreland City.
That's right. He delivered at the death last time these two sides played. Different circumstance here, but at the same time, he's done it again against Moreland City. And the number 13 may be unlucky for some, not for Harrison Sawyer tonight. 13th goal for the season. He is such a magnet for not only entertainment, but also for quality. And it's quite fitting in a week such as this, where he stood out a few nights back, that he puts the exclamation mark on this game.
A very different looking late goal to his last one, but they all count just the same. And if you are mentioning those cup goals as well, I think it is 17 now in all competitions this season.
Triple substitution for South Melbourne coming off. Number 9, Harrison Sawyer. Number 21, Ross Archibald.
Substitutions for South Melbourne now.
Being replaced by number 6, Lucas Inglese.
The game
number 15, Zach Spiteri, and number 19, Cooper Halfpenny.
Cooper Halfpenny, Lucas Inglese, and Zach Spiteri, the players who come on. So 3 youthful lights in place of 3 experienced heads. Always good to see the young stars get a chance to walk out in front of their home faithful.
And this sort of atmosphere as well, they'll relish this opportunity too. Sutsitis, who, I've got to say, even though Sawyer scored just before and he's off the park at the moment, Sutsitis has been pretty gallant, I think, in that one-on-one duel for much of the game, particularly when it was in the balance. Painter Andrews has been very good, particularly in the last 10 minutes. Just replacing Mikula with that role in orchestrating a number of opportunities with corners and throws and just his general play along the right flank. I've got another opportunity here, South Melbourne, with the corner. It'll be Pios with the responsibility. Well, he utilise Brennan here, he will. Brennan, deflection. Comes back. Painter Andrews. Getting involved, Spiteri as well. So 4-2 the scoreline. Spiteri, one of those players mentioned that just came onto the pitch in the last few moments. Painter Andrews over the head. Cuba been good in the second half for Moreland City, really injected a bit of life into their play and their transition. Brennan happy to give that one to Condolian as the final whistle is blown at Lakeside Stadium. A fruitful week for South Melbourne continues. They were tested tonight, but they responded in kind with a 4-2 victory over Moreland City. And they continue their fight in the top echelon of the NPL Victoria competition.
2 games, 9 goals, 2 wins. You cannot ask for a better week than that for South Melbourne, not to mention the several thousand fans across the 2 games as well. I mean, this was a really fascinating contest from start to finish, one that really ebbed and flowed, but I think one as well, Damien, that has really, I think, proved a lot of these 2 sides' detractors wrong. There are a lot of people who would say, oh, Moreland City, they set up too defensively. South Melbourne, they don't play attacking football. They don't go for it enough. Well, both sides have contributed to what was a really entertaining 6-goal spectacle here. South Melbourne, you always felt once they managed to wrestle back that control from going behind in the first half through Matt Spall, it was always going to be their game. But credit to Moreland City, their defence was really resolute for large portions of the game, and they hung in long enough to grab that goal back and give South something to think about. And once again, fortunately for Esteban Quintas, his South side proved themselves equal to the challenge. And Harrison Sawyer, of course, not that I'm surprised, was the man who stepped up to seal the 3 points for them and set them up perfectly for what will be a massive, massive game next Saturday against Hume City, a mouth-watering top 6 clash in weight as South return to the top of the table with this result.
That's right, and I think it's a good reflection of South Melbourne's fitness as well. 2 games within the week. I think maybe some thought they might have been dusty off the cobwebs off the back of a game earlier in the week in the early minutes, but tonight they did respond well, particularly after conceding. You've got to remember too, even though they were 1-0 down, they dominated the territory battle in the first half, South Melbourne. It was consistently inside their forward half, and really was Spall's effort to basically run off his opponent and have the conviction to take on Lejeune that enabled Moreland City to take the early lead. But yeah, they really did respond. The cream rising to the top for South Melbourne, and an entertaining contest for the spectators tonight.
What a way to seal another great weekend of NPL Victoria action. South Melbourne return to the top of the pops in the competition for 2024. In wait is Hume City next week, and we'll be counting down the days until that one arrives. But for now, we'll farewell you from Lakeside, from myself, Lockie Flanagan, and from Damien Watson. It's goodbye for now. The full-time score at Lakeside Stadium, South Melbourne 4, Moreland City 2.